huge thank you to Scott for the work that he's done around this and bringing us into the 21st century with our technology. Yes, and thank you, Scott, for the work you've done in that. And apologies for absence. If anybody's got any apologies that we haven't already got recorded, could they just pass them on to Scott for the minutes, please? Item number 2, the minutes and actions from our previous meeting, which was held on the 24th of October. And to begin with, we'll just consider the minutes. Is everybody content that the minutes are a true record of our meeting?
Yeah.
Happy with that? Are there any actions that we need to discuss that don't appear on our agenda today? In terms of the actions, I just wanted to pick I just wanted to pick up the action number 9 there, which numbers 9 and 10, which were around the Bond of Ethics annual report. Is there an update on the Ethics Committee now?
We're still looking for an ethics lead, so we thought we had something in place, but they weren't able to pick it up. So we are back out to advert for an ethics lead, so hoping to have somebody in position by Christmas.
Okay. How are you managing this in the interim period?
Well, it's just unfortunate the ethics committee hasn't sat for quite some time. So in terms of the committee itself, I mean, obviously presents itself with a difficulty. In terms of the responsibilities for officers, then they are, for the chief officer in particular, they are managed through the ethics, through the culture board, and we will pick our statutory responsibilities from there. So we still produce the annual report for the board here, but clearly we do need that person in place to get the committee back up and running again.
Okay, so quite an important role for the culture board then, interim.
Yeah.
I think coming off the back of this week, the last week's chief inspectors boards, there may well be a bigger pool of people that we can actually look at, because traditionally it has been a chief inspector led board. So with 12 people, Nikki, is it true, about to be posted later today, we'll have an opportunity to identify the right person.
Excellent, that's positive to hear. Thank you. Thank you for that. Has anybody got anything else on any of the actions? No? No. We'll move on to item number 3 then, which is the inspection and progress report. Is that you, Nikki?
Yeah, I can cover that, Commissioner. So I think the biggest highlights on there are the positive SOC inspection that we've just gone through. We haven't had the formal feedback yet, but the unofficial feedback that we've had from the inspectors that were here doing the inspection was they were quite pleased. There may be some areas that we need to sort of tighten up on, but overall, the position of the in response to serious organised crime was positive. So we'll await that initial response probably after Christmas. We've got a thematic inspection coming up now on the 15th of December for firearms licensing. And we've had pre-meetings with the team, and they'll be doing field work from the 15th. So that's a thematic, but we expect the results from that after Christmas as well, in the spring. The FMS 6, we had some feedback on that, which was very positive. It's been a bit of a journey because it is a beast of a document, but I think we're starting to get really structured with that now. There was some feedback on template use, consistency with template, which we'll be using now going forward, getting the updates for FMS 7. But and then we need to do some work on prioritisation and planning, making that stronger. But going forward, we're in a much better place now going into FMS, the prep for FMS 7. And there's work ongoing with, I know the leadership was one of the areas that was picked up on. So there's some work ongoing, obviously. And we've got the ACCs now in permanent positions. So the chief officer team is much more settled, and there's a lot of leadership programs going on around the force. So working towards that area. Operating model, it's embedded, but we won't be having a review on that until later on when HMIC get back in, because they want to end up running for like if they can give us some feedback on that. But so far so good with the operating model and neighbourhood with the prevention and deterrence. We've got neighbourhood matters. I think there's been a briefing on that one, and it's really quite positive. The community engagement with that is really in a improving position. So I think there's a review next week or next week that they're doing some of these surveys and some of the outcomes of the surveys. That's really quite positive. I think that those are the headlines. And the work around DVDSs, particularly in the safeguarding arena. And we had a revisit from HMIC. We've put some more staffing in there, reviewed all the processes that are ongoing in there. We're looking at a much improved picture and starting to see some real green shoots there. So it's obviously the safeguarding and the risk in there is managed really robustly. So we're starting to see quite a significant improvement in there. We've injected some staff and some process review for the safeguarding hubs. That was another area, and I think that was highlighted by HMIC, and that is starting to the compliance with the strategy conference, and that's starting to show improvement as well. So I think that is probably the biggest highlights from the improvements that we're taking on. AFIs, we're starting to see some real improvement in that, because I think we had almost 150 written them down here now. We've now got 93. This is the end of October's update. 93 live. 77 of those we are working on. 11 of those are 5 of those are national, so we have to wait for national work ongoing with those. 11 are waiting for the re-inspection, so we can have those looked at. And then there's 47 level 2s and 27 level 3. So real progress on those. We've got a real structured governance around those. I chair the Force Improvement Board, where we have a spotlight report every month on each of the areas, where the leads can present their gaps, AFIs, and the workers on top of that. So yeah, starting to see some traction on those.
So you mentioned that. I think it's really good to hear how you've reduced the AFIs. I mean, that's a relatively short space of time, isn't it? So, and I think that's a reflection of the amount of work that's gone into that. So I think that's really pleasing to see that. And certainly I hope that our comments will be fed back to the teams as well. So that's really positive work in relation to that. When we previously discussed the issues around safeguarding and vulnerability, we've been informed that a strategy was being developed, and now today you've talked about some of the actions that are being undertaken. Does that mean that strategy is being finalised and the plan is being implemented?
It comes through your board, isn't it?
Yeah, it's my board into the Vulnerability Board, which I chaired most recently. It was Friday in the week just past, and I see the problem profiles, the strategy and the delivery plans as well.
So I don't think previously though we'd had sight of that strategy. So obviously now it's complete and being implemented. Can that be shared with us? Yeah. Anybody else got any questions?
Not a question, but I was just I think a comment really about the positive introductory meeting that we'd had with my and Darren over to Constable as well, and just that it was a really supportive conversation as she came along to the exhibition that launched the White Ribbon Day event as well. So it was, I think, a good start to the relationship with her.
Yeah, it was a really positive conversation. A good foundation for moving forward as well. I think she showed a lot of openness to understanding the changes that we've gone through and the journey that we've gone through, you know, over the last 12 months, and that we were at the start of almost like a new era where we were taking a course.
Really positive, isn't it? And I think what's important is that we feed back to all the teams involved, because it's a huge amount of effort that's gone into this and addressing this. So I'd like to thank everyone. Anybody else got any comments on that item that they'd like to make?
No, really encouraging, I think, that we're getting progress in that in areas. And again, I will think, just say quickly, I know I've repeated it a number of times, but it is a window of time when that inspection happened, and I think bringing it right up to its current level, some of those areas where we were found wanting in an AFI area are now being not just addressed, they're being delivered and constantly delivered as well, and maintained. So, you know, for example, being our attendance, emergency and priority response calls being constantly over 80%, and it being a strange day when we haven't got that level of performance, and one that the chief officer team really do deep dives on to find out and establish the details of that very quickly. And I think that momentum has been maintained.
It's really good for our citizens.
Definitely.
Thank you for that. Anybody else got any comments on that? We move on then to the organisational performance report. Now, it's quite a comprehensive report, and once again, huge thank you to the team for organising information around the priority group plan. It really helps us in this way. So well done. I recognise the volume of work that sits behind this in order to enable us to discuss this in this way today. So thank you to everybody for that. We're just going to try a different approach with this today. So there's no requirement to present this on a slide by slide basis. But what I would like to do before we go into some of the questions that we've got is I'll give the opportunity, Deputy Chief Constable, to just give an overview and highlight any areas that you think you'd like to highlight to us.
Yeah, obviously the positives what the Chief has just referred to in relation to the business as usual as it is now, because the attendance times. It is we're well over 90% in both areas. So the focus on now will be looking at the more routine calls, because while we've got that, we do have to look at the other areas as well, the most routine and that. So make sure that we are focusing on that. So I think that's probably one of the biggest areas. Looking at the perception survey and the engagement, this is an area that we're hoping that we will start to see some traction in because of the neighbourhood matters and the work that's ongoing there. Because I know we've really had a lot of focus on some of the feedback on the perception survey hasn't been where we would like it to be. So with the new neighbourhood matters work, I think the focus is on getting those community engagement surveys and the feedback for that. So hopefully we'll start to see some improvement in that. Overall crime, if I just touch on that, it is it does fluctuate. It's not, we've not seen a huge increase in that. What we do want to see though is an improvement in our outcome rate. Our outcome rate has been quite static for several months. The demand that comes in through the door obviously is more related to crime, so that doesn't reflect on our solved rate. But what we do need to see is an increase in that solved rate, because some of the areas, as I said, are quite static. We've seen an increase in our solved rate for burglaries over the past year, and that's gone. I would say in the last 18 months we've seen quite a significant improvement in that. Again, that is sort of plateaued off. And so that's one area, obviously, that's very topical with the public and public safety. So that's one area.
Do you mind if I just come in there? Can you just thank you on somewhere if I think it's relevant? And you'll probably have seen that the path for 2025 to 27 is changing, and very much the focus in terms of accountability to the public is around how we deal with people who are suspected that offences are efficient and effective. We are doing that. We've currently got a gold group running to deal with that very issue, because we're very conscious that it has a direct impact on outcomes, it has a direct impact on investigative timelines, it has a direct impact on public satisfaction. With Gold Group most recently, yesterday, we're presenting a business case at Art Model Board on Friday, which will then go to the Service Improvement Board with the town, which will propose a number of changes to the whole way we manage and scrutinise people who are wanted for offences and how each pillar contributes to that, with the intent that will be more efficient, more effective. So that when as chief officers we're having conversations about that kind of case, we can say within the last 24 hours, do we need to arrest? Because we have that conversation now, but we're trying to time it down. So our expectations of dealing with DA offenders, and we've got that real clear line of scrutiny to drive some of that operational effectiveness. And I hope that that will drive some of these numbers. So I just want you to be reassured that there's a clear plan in place around that work. Yeah. Sorry, Mum.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you.
What I will say is a positive is the addressing antisocial behaviour with the CAT team. And I think it was really significant around the Red Bonfire line, how the antisocial behaviour was an improvement there. So I think the CAT team working on local tasking and the areas that they're working in, we see a huge reduction in the antisocial behaviour without going into the detail of the. I think that impact, I think, is having a massive difference, especially to the communities, because they're tackling the areas and the issues that are really relevant to the community. So I think we've seen some vast improvements in this. And then the lasting legacy when they move on is something that we're monitoring as well, because all very well and good when we target an area and we've got the CAT team there and they're focusing on that. What we want to see is business as usual. When that CAT team moves away from that area, the local policing area is still responding to that antisocial behaviour and the work there. So 999 demand, as I said, is really superb at the moment, and our response times excellent. We're seeing that now as a constant. Most serious violence, we've seen a little drop in some of the reported in that, and a slight increase in some of the performance rates there and the assault rates. We've got a most violent and homicide meeting, which looks at the themes there and whether it's knife crime or if there's some hotspot areas with violent crime there. So that's focused on. It also goes to the Heath Operational Performance Board, but there's another board that feeds into that. Knife crime, that's where I said that is a real focus. We've recently had Operation Sector, which has had some positive results on that, but there is a focus in both the operational meetings and the local meetings as well, looking at that specific area. Drug offences, that tends to, we do see some fantastic work that's done by the proactive teams there. We're seeing some real good results on cannabis factories and some SOC teams working there. The solve rate has gone up there, so we're seeing a positive there. That tends to be the work that's ongoing with the community, some of the intelligence. We've seen an increase in the intelligence that comes in for the drug offences, so that's a positive there. Shoplifting, that's progress at the moment. I think that's one of the focuses that we've got on. Obviously, it's a seasonal, and it does cause a lot of impact on our communities, but also we've got a bit of a revolving door with the offenders that are coming through on that one. We've had some proactive operations ongoing in some of the local teams with that one, so there's a focus on that. Residential burglary, we do see, as I said, we have seen over the past 18 months that the assault rate went up. It started to go back down again, but there's a focus on that with making sure that the CID teams and they've got the right resources and working on the burglaries. Robbery, we've seen a fluctuation in that. We do tend to see that is focused on some of the city centre, around Newport, we tend to see clusters of that, but CID again deal with those, and we've seen a drop in the solve rate there, so that's something that we do need to focus on there. Just pick up on violence against women and girls, but just pick up on the rape and the rape investigation team that we're looking at there. We've seen some fantastic results there with the solve rate. What we're starting to see as well, which we were struggling with, is the criminal justice outcomes. But that is we're starting to see some improvement in that as well. But we are well above the national solve rate for rape investigations. We've done excellent work ongoing there. Serious sexual offences again, that's a positive picture. Stalking, this is an area of focus for us. We've now got the stalking and civil order officer in place. We've seen an increase in reporting in this, but we take that as a positive because we're doing a lot of work around recognition, etc. on stalking. And what we are looking to do though is making sure that those solve rates, which are not where we want them to be, but there's a greater looking at making sure our officers understanding the training, etc. But that is something that is very much a focus at the moment. Missing children, that's a positive story at the moment. I think we are seeing a reduction in the number of repeat children that are going missing. We've got dedicated teams now, dedicated individuals, sorry, that are looking at a daily missing person meeting, which is it's got that oversight and working with the local authorities and the MACE meetings, looking at those children and why they are going missing. But that is starting to show a more positive picture. Sure, if there's any other areas. Oh, children in police custody, I won't pick up on that one. We've seen a reduction in that, so we've got a really good focus in that. I picked that up in my children and young persons meeting as well, so we've got really good scrutiny on that. I don't know if there's anything else.
Okay.
I think it's to put into context, I think that what you talked about, Vicky, with regard to the Halloween period and bonfire night, was between 39 and 45% reductions compared to the previous year. Massive amount. So, you know, that isn't just the work that's been undertaken on the night, whatever the resources out there and visible. That's the legwork that's been undertaken by the community and the neighbourhood teams being out there and engaging and being involved in, you know, distractions, I suppose, to an extent, and, you know, and being involved with the communities and having that engagement. So I think it's a really, really positive thing.
Do you think the more localised social media presence has had an impact on that as well on public? Because there's a lot of positive feedback.
So I do. I think it's really, really positive. Interestingly, one of the conversations that we are having through our performance boards is whether that also drives the reports that come to us. And we're trying to understand, because we know when demand has gone up, digital demand is slowly increasing. It's a national shift in demand, so we're not necessarily the outlier, but what we're trying to understand is, are our localised messages driving reports of the same? So, for example, we are very good at vehicle seizure and dealing with mopeds, recovering bikes, and our reporting of similar type of offences are increasing. So it's a wholly positive message that we're giving, and we sometimes can utilise those messages to drive the right performing, because it's not the only other type of offence we would want to be reported to us. So hugely positive, and I think there's opportunities in there to improve some of the reporting mechanisms. Good, yeah, it's been very good.
And it's really encouraging. I think that you know, some partners are echoing some of our central messaging as well, which is really helpful within the communities. And so town councils have been on board by literally reposting things straight away. So it's a really good thing.
Anything else you'd like to add before I move on to some questions? Sorry.
So I just wanted to begin with a query about the workforce information that we've got presented to us. So we're presented with information around the number of officers per operational pillar. There's also a number of officers for the establishment figures who aren't reflected in these pillars. And I just wanted to explore a little bit further, just on your levels of confidence and assurance in terms of having the right numbers of officers available to meet the demands in each pillar. So, and in relation to that, any concerns that you might have around it?
Yeah, I think if I look at the response pillar, first of all, obviously we've got the new structure and neighbourhood and response. We are still carrying vacancies within the response pillar. Just to a quick overview, the neighbourhood pillars are priority at the moment because we've got the neighbourhood guarantee and we're trying to get those to make sure that we are we're adhering to the neighbourhood policing guarantee. Crime, the crime pillar, which was a real issue for us previously, where we had huge detective vacancies. Now I can report actually quite confidently we've got those from. What we're looking at to do now after Christmas is start moving people across now that we've got the continual entries of officers. Those numbers are increasing, and by March I think we should start to move people back over into the response teams. At the moment we are the response team is going to be our focus because that's where we're carrying the majority of the vacancies. But I think this plan in place is a real robust plan in place around when and how and making sure that we've got those minimum numbers to.
Yeah, fantastic. So I own it in terms of the establishment around 3 pillars. So I have a meeting every month in relation to what vacancies I've got and when, and I set the prioritisation for the teams in relation to where and when we can move people. If there's a role that's identified from threat, having a risk, wasn't considered as part of that prioritisation, because if it might be one individual in one role and it doesn't fit within a bracket, then that can be escalated to me. The neighbourhood, we mean neighbourhood ward managers because of the neighbourhood policing grant. And then we are looking at response and CID on a level playing field, and then some of the RPSO posts. But what I always ensure is that we can deliver the tactics we need to deliver in order to keep our communities safe, to make sure we've got enough people trained in each of those criteria. But I also remind you that we will always carry some vacancies because I need to be able to keep that recruitment wheel going, and to do that I need vacancies for people to go with. So I've got thresholds which are RAG rated so we understand the risk. For example, there were 2 flagged this month by the pillar leads in relation to coming up to a red grading for which they needed supervision for myself around prioritisation. So I'm really happy with the structures. Crime being well established in relation to safety management, neighbourhood and responsive catching up in honesty because the pillar system is new to them. They focus on that. It hasn't been the same as crime, but we know the crime approach works, and rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, we are adopting the approach that they take. So yes, I'm happy and I'm confident we've got good governance and I've got the works.
So we've got a modification one because ultimately what we're sort of aware of is that between 92 and 95 there was a financial freeze on police recruitment. So a lot of our staff entered the organisation around 95, so we're going to see a conveyor belt. We are seeing a conveyor belt of retirements as people hit their 30-year service. So as Vicky said, the force has been through a difficult journey with regard in relation to detectives. That was on the risk register previously. It was a focus that we really had to channel our energy towards. That is in a good position for a multitude of reasons. But now it's about maintaining that position whilst actually being aware that that frontline uniform response aspect of things is where our risk is creeping up.
I think the other bit to note, and to forgive me, is that these numbers can't stay static. There was things changed nationally. We talked about the written and the PIR that's coming after Christmas. We talk about the national focus, the sentencing review. That may require us to change our model, in which case these numbers might need to change. But we've got governance through Karen's team for us to be able to do that and review it.
We've got good modelers, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've got modelers to make sure that those matches demand.
Against the understanding demand page, you might see recommendations. I just got the team going through all of our historic models and mapping those to see if there are any gaps that we need to go back to. So that piece of work finished in the next weeks now, so I can focus the team in the nuclear manufacturers and the ones that become in based on it. But the response ones, the neighbourhood ones, the crime ones, the professional spheres, including the data.
That's really positive. Thank you for that. Thanks. Just you mentioned today the Neighbourhood Matters tool and how that's being rolled out, and obviously trust and confidence is something that both the Chief Constable and I are focused on. I wonder, can you give any more detail? Have you seen any more kind of early impacts on the Neighbourhood Matters tool, and how is that supported by the wider engagement strategy?
That's that's any help to you, Commissioner. So these stats are all as of the 20th of November, so slightly ahead of the pack. I thought that would be helpful. So we've got 1,775 residents that have completed the priority survey and 4,342 members which are registered to the systems. And we know nationally from the work that Community Matters do that 60% of the number of people that deal with the people will engage with us on the social media platform. So there will be a high percentage of people in there for which this is the engagement tool they choose, as opposed to, when you reference the really useful localised social media work we're doing, that's not necessarily the information that they would have received before. We've had lots of information in relation to what and how people see it as their priorities, and those 3 community safety concerns are being flagged to us for us to work on. There's been lots of conversations around hidden harm and the community's understanding of hidden harm, and we're also looking at how we put out information real time so that we can get a meaningful analysis. And interestingly, thus far we've sent out 251 alerts and updates, which have reached just over 3,100 members. And in terms of usefulness of these messages, because I think that's always key to know, we're getting a satisfaction rating of 4.35 out of 5. Obviously, we can't utilise that instead of the perception survey. We've had lots of conversations around this, and Mr. McLean said it much better than I will in terms of the impact of different data sets. Of course, the perception survey is undertaken independently. This is obtained by us, so it's important to know, but it doesn't replace the perception survey. But that is matching what other forces see, so we know that we're on the right track with it. Still very early days, but they're only starting in October.
Excellent. And is that being rolled out across the whole of this whole thing then?
Yes.
We'll go to everybody. So we started this one in initially, you come round, you've got your feet initially, but it'll go so all across one.
So it hasn't been rolled out across the whole of Gwent yet?
Yes, no, everyone can access it. That's where we focused our initial field training, and we brought people in from other areas of Gwent and use those as hubs.
It's quite a clever system though, because you can monitor the buy-in from staff. So already we've been able to recognise neighbourhood team from Bedwas who've really bought in early, and they've gone out there and been getting people registered on the database. So we recognise that, and you're just trying to mirror similar behaviours across the areas that have got less engagement.
It's really useful.
It's very clever.
Just thinking about that then, and I just reflecting actually, not just on the performance information that you've provided, but also some of the feedback that that the Chief Constable and I received recently. So we were at an event in Manila with some incredibly positive feedback from members of the Tredegar Town Council about the work of the Community Action Team. And we are getting really good feedback in terms of some of those results there. So will the CAT team become a permanent fixture across Gwent Police after following on from these results? What's your vision for this in the future?
I'd like it to be. I think obviously, I think the neighbourhood guarantee funding is helpful for us to be able to launch that really proactive stance and make a tangible difference to enhance our neighbourhood capabilities. I think, I don't remember if Nicky or Vicky said, the idea behind the CAP principle is that when they leave there after a sustained period of 4 months, they leave a neighbourhood team which can continue that momentum. They built up that trust within that community and they keep those relationships and they do the hotspot problem oriented policing approach in their areas, which we are seeing the early signs of for those areas that we've moved from, and we are monitoring that. I think in a longer term perspective, obviously it would be ideal to have that funding maintained, and I know that's a bit of an uncertain perspective moving on throughout the financial years. What I would say is from a force perspective, it's really, really important for me, I know it is for you too, in relation to visibility and neighbourhood policing being high in relation to getting that trust and confidence. And my aspiration would be, regardless, to maintain this very, very proactive team that are bringing us such tangible results and contributing towards what the force mission is. You know, they're not the hugest team in the world, but they are making a significant difference. I get that it comes at a cost, but I think sometimes you look at, right, we've got this in place now. What would we lose by not having it? And I think we would lose some of the margins that we've gained. I think it's a great thing that we're doing, and I'd like to maintain it.
It was so rich and unprecedented.
Yeah.
I think it's been there 20 years.
No, you're right, Darren. And you know what? So if you look at the two areas within the force now with the highest solve rates as an actual department, one is the investigation hub. Well, you'd expect that because that is their role, but it still means that they're operating really well because they're dealing with things that we want them to deal with. But to have the community action team having a positive outcome rate of a similar nature, you know, for a neighbourhood team, like you say, you don't see that.
That's a pre-set business case.
Just moving slightly on, and you mentioned some positive outcomes in terms of work that's been undertaken in relation to issues around drugs and crime in relation to that. And previously, when we've discussed this, you've also mentioned the impact that border force operations have on this as well. Some of those, the results that we've talked about, you've also said it's down to an increase in intelligence as well. And I'm just thinking about that. Is there a relationship, to your mind, is there a relationship between some of this really positive work that's going on around building trust and confidence, and the confidence people have that they can give you that information confidentially, which will help with this?
Definitely. I think our PCSOs are vital to this intelligence. We did see a couple of months ago, we saw a little bit of a drop in the intelligence submissions. And I think that engagement, but I think the work that we are doing now with the neighbourhood work, I think it's giving the people that confidence to be able to give us that intelligence. Our PCSOs and our neighbourhood teams are absolutely vital to getting this intelligence, and that's what we've seen that increase now back with the intelligence logs that are coming through. So I think that is starting to the impact, I think, of building that trust and confidence is showing in that some of that intel submission.
I think that I agree with what Nicky said. I think that the context as well, the trust and confidence within PCSOs is growing. that they're not getting mixed messages about what's expected of them. They realise it's their role to be out there engaging with their communities embedded, and that intelligence comes from those continuity conversations going on really. And I think over time we're going to see that really just be a regular thing.
That's good. It's really positive, isn't it? Positive indicator around just confidence. So I wanted to touch on the dangerous dogs issue. So obviously we've had another tragic event within the Gwent Police area, and we have received, so policing overall has received an increase in funding to address this problem. But I wanted to take this opportunity really to ask about any concerns that you have around this, given the resources available to policing. Are you confident in the current approach, or is there more that can be done?
Do you want to do the force approach, and I'll talk about a little bit about our national position.
Yeah, and I'll leave the financial side of it to the chief, because I think that comes into the financial bit, but I think we've all got concerns around that. So internally, I think we have some robust governance in place. It's taken some time, and it's actually in a lot to Nia's team from a legal perspective, because historically we very much focused on the criminal side, and thanks to the assistance from Nia's team, we now very much look at the civil and the criminal side, much more in parallel, which gives us some effectiveness and efficiencies around how we deal with some dangerous dogs, because we were holding on to investigations for far too long. We've had a knock-on consequence for time and for our officers being tied up dealing with these investigations. In terms of our staff, we've improved liaison officers that are on shift, to include not just dog handlers but neighbourhood officers, because they attend to the warrants, they deal with the warrants. That's our approach to it. We're also improving the number of our staff that are DART trained, so operationally we can respond better and quicker to deal with dangerous dogs and reduce the risk to our officers, because there is a risk. We monitor, there's a bi-weekly meeting in terms of monitoring how many dogs we've got in kennels, how long for, what's the progress of those investigations, and then I get a monthly out-turn report in relation to what that looks like. So this is a fairly new process. In September we were at 57, and this report, forgive me, is about a fortnight old, but at 4 nights ago we had 40 dogs in kennel. The team did manage to get it down to 37, but as you are aware, we've had some really tragic incidents in the community, and that does drive more reporting. That's not necessarily a bad thing. If there are dangerous dogs in the community, then we want to be able to deal with them if there is threat, harm and risk to our people. But yes, locally I'm content we've got a good structure in place. That said, it is a cost in terms of the resources we're allowed to do it, because it is resource heavy and it is costly. And I probably pass over to the chief to talk about some of the costs.
Yeah, thanks, Vicky. I think you're aware, Commissioner, from a national position, I've been fighting hard for policing to get compensation really for the governmental changes which weren't factored into the previous government's legislation change. That's been a long journey, and you'll be aware that we managed to secure £9 million for the UK, which I think the encouraging aspect of that is that we received £295,000 from as a force, a lot more than we'd usually get on the 1% ratio, because of the fact that Gwent is a bit of a hotspot for dangerous dogs, and you know, I'd like to say that's letting up. It's not, and as Vicky articulated there, we've had to really review our staffing, our number of dog legislation officers, our kennelling procedures, and our revisiting of ongoing cases to ensure that we've got a robust oversight of it, and we're not unnecessarily keeping dogs longer than they should be, and that the criminal justice journey is as swift as it can be. But it is a pressure. It is a pressure. I don't think we'll see that let up for a generation of dogs, because if you go back to the 1991 Act, that was exactly the same with pit bulls at that time, and it takes a generation of dogs to actually see a bit of a let up in relation to that. What we have got now is a position whereby if people are breeding those dogs, then they're doing it for legal purposes and sending them not for criminal activity. But we are seeing an increase in public concern, understandably. When you have an incident like there was in Rachel, then that's obviously causing a big concern, and that there was an influx of calls from Monmouthshire, and it was, you know, I think there was a community perception sometimes that we could just come and take the dogs from people, which obviously isn't, you know, as in people voluntarily wanted to give up their dogs to us, which is not something that we can do. And obviously we can give advice in relation to that effectively. There's lots of methods that we use to be able to deal with them and keep them on the streets, but it is increasing pressure. But what I should have added as well was that one payoff that we had off DEFRA is a one-off payment. It is not a recurring injection that we will have off DEFRA or any other, and it's been very, very explicit that will now be absorbed into policing costs in general, which we haven't had any additional budgets given for.
So ultimately, the cost of dealing that once with the local taxpayers hearing grants.
Ultimately.
Thank you for that. Thank you. That's really helpful, very sobering, but really helpful. And I think it's important that we discuss this in a public meeting such as this, so that our citizens are aware of the costs, not just the cost to society, but the financial cost, financial burden of this.
Absolutely, and we give a strong commitment to always positively acting on these calls as well. We've seen the communities that have been affected by fatal attacks, Pentrail had 2 within a 12-month period. They don't recover. I say they don't recover quickly. They don't recover for a long time, and that's really been seen in relation to the number of calls we've had from Caerphilly, and the appetite, I will say, to have responsible dog ownership within that area has been a positive thing that we've been able to latch on with the local authorities as well, to be able to promote the Leeds campaign as well, which is a good thing. But yeah, we're a small force. We are disproportionately affected by dangerous dogs, and I say that they are traditionally also stateless dogs as well. And we do find that there is a disproportionate number of those dogs in some of our more deprived areas too.
Which impacts on our residents then, doesn't it? Because if you about the communities, the neighbours within the communities, the concern from when you said in terms of going about their daily business. I mean, there's a responsible dog ownership in that way. Yeah, it does impact significantly. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. And we launched our campaign. Seems like ages ago now. It's only a week. I know. So we recently launched our activities for a White Ribbon campaign this year, and we're really focused on raising awareness and really getting people to try and think about how this impacts people in their everyday lives. So we've got a great art exhibition that we've been running, which has provided an opportunity for officers and for our partners and stakeholders to really view this and start to think about this in a different way. And there's a lot of work going on in the partnership space around this, which I think we should celebrate and really welcome, because it really is a collective piece of work. So I wanted to touch on some of the performance data in the report, because we have come across this before. So I wanted to talk really about the commentary around rape, because in the report itself, the commentary indicates that
these figures are also related to non-recent crimes as well. So we should be really pleased that awareness has increased in people's lives, victims know that they can come forward and that they can share what's happened with them, and they will be listened to and it will be acted upon. So the narrative tells us this. I was just wondering, are you doing any further work around this? Can you offer any further insight into this? Are you doing any further work around analysing this in relation to the proportion that the historic, and also what is there a commonality connected to reporting? So is there something that you can, you know, are there key factors that underpin that reporting post for recent?
Yeah, it definitely is. I think when we see what we've seen trends in, if there's media coverage of a high profile case, we will see an increase in reports right across since we set the rape investigation team up. You will see an influx of people having the confidence to come forward and report historic. They're very, very difficult to get convictions on. But it's no longer that outcome that the victim is looking for. But I think the work that the rape investigation team does and the victim engagement there is absolutely crucial. That they will be believed, and we will take that case through. I think there's a lot of work ongoing with the judiciary as well around juries and barristers, etc. Around particularly around the historic, and the issue is, and I know this is a separate issue, is how long rape investigations are taking to get to court. But what I will say is even though whether it's a recent report or a historic report, the attrition rate for keeping victims on board in the rape investigation team is superb. They know they believe, they know they will be supported right the way through. That waiting for the trial to come to court is not ideal. However, I think that that confidence, I think, in people coming forward and reporting. I know the team look at going out and doing positive action with areas that are underrepresented and maybe won't report. They're doing some work around that. But I think the fact that quite a big percentage of our reports that come into the rape investigation team are historic shows that the public have got that confidence that we will be looked at and taken through. So, and we've had some fantastic feedback from a couple of the cases that have recently gone to court and how the impact on victims' lives, I think is is a testament to the fact that the work that the team do. So I think that correlation between the reporting of historic, to answer your question, is definitely work that they do look at in the investigation.
And that's something that's come through very strongly as well, where we've engaged with our survey with citizens in Ireland. Something that's come through very, very strongly, and that is about people have been victim of crime, being believed, how important it is that when people make that disclosure that they are believed, they do feel that they're believed. So there's some really positive work going on with that, which I think we should celebrate.
Just again, just for the public reassurance from Commissioner, just on that, our crime recording in Gwent is outstanding, and also our sexual offence reporting and recording was over 98%, which is one of the best in the country, which means when victims ring the police, we will believe them, we will record their crime, and then all the investigative matters follow from there. And we are one of the best in the country, rated outstanding. So again, it's just an important message for the people listening, I think, to understand where we stand in Gwent on that.
That's excellent, isn't it? That's absolutely excellent, and it's so important to point that out because, as you said, Deputy Chief Constable, actually, there are other stages in the process where other partner agencies may be involved, where there may not be such positive outcomes, but in terms of that contact and contacting the police, and people being taken seriously, people being believed, and an investigation following on from that is happening, and people should take great comfort.
just to come in on that as well, we had the Criminal Justice Board last Tuesday. There was a spotlight session from New Pathways and talked about their relationship with criminal justice partners, including the police. And although part of it was making recommendations about how things can improve, they also read out a number of testimonies from survivors of sexual violence who commended both the police and CPS in how they sort of really not just help them in the process, but moving on in their lives in general. And I think the key message was ongoing communication is what's appreciated, I think, more than anything, as well as, you know, as well as the language used, things like that as well. But it was some really impactful testimonies that came through there.
Okay, so has everybody got any further questions they'd like to ask on the performance information? Thank you for that, and thank you for your responses. Thank you on behalf of our citizens, but I'm sure it's of interest of our citizens to actually live that as well. So thank you for that. Should we move on then to finance monitoring report Q2?
So this summarises the position across the tax year against the budget was set earlier. So from that perspective, it reflects a phasing which you know what's coming happens presentation in January. It's fair to say that a number of things have happened since the first paper, which have flex that budget slightly in terms of additional grants, payroll has been etc. Similarly, in terms of the timing of some of the budget lines of that one, I think it's fair to say that some of those have changed this year, but there's some learning for us in terms of being able to make those more accurate going forward, so that we can make sure that the actual expenditure is hitting in the correct month. So we're not getting lots of timing differences, timing variations. We will always get variations between when third parties send income or expenditure to us between quarters, and that's reflected into the narrative in terms of. But we'll continue to work with them in terms of making sure that we can make it as accurate as possible. Similarly, in terms of the layout, I'll be working with my finance team to look at how we present the information clearly for everybody, so that we can really drive down into operational policing, the capital programme, so that it is much easier to see the operational policing aspects, the operational service delivery, and how that then drives through into performance and trust and confidence from the organisation. We'll walk those into each individual area. I'm not going to go through a huge detail of that sort of thing in terms of each area, but I'll just go through it. The overarching position at the end of Q2 is £1.6 million overspend, but that is largely unrealistic, but we'll come back by year end. The forecast position for the end of the year highlighted there is a £5.8 million underspend, but that is after releasing reserves. As per the original budget, so we won't be missing from that perspective. So it will be a breaking position. In terms of the key elements, from a pay perspective, it's the salary and staff salaries and allowances. I think it's fair to say on £140 million budget, we're there or thereabouts when it comes to year end, about £500,000 overspend on that element. The recruitment and the establishment, and this covered already in terms of performance budget. So I'm fully recruited from that perspective in terms of what we need. The overtime element is currently showing as overspend, but please bear in mind that that is a gross position. There is funding that is received on the back of that, so for example, Operation Lockwood, which is the ASB that's on previous year. This year, the same. That is an element of that which is offset by income lower down. So it will be cost neutral. There are a couple of one-offs that are coming through in terms of the completion of national legal cases such as Allard and Codec Human Intelligence Source panels, which are coming through on that one. From an overtime perspective, operationally it's been covered through the PRS continuous and necessary assets, view of that, and then lower down to individual SMTs, senior management teams, and at a lower level in terms of departments. The rest of the element is the element that is typical of this has been covered from an operational perspective. It's the start. In terms of the premises costs, other employee related costs currently being spent, but there are a number of health, retirement, and personal injuries that are capital injuries that are in the pipeline from that perspective. They may not crystallise by the year end, but the forecast is that they will be again there or thereabouts from the year end. From that side, again, in terms of the premises costs, transport costs, again, when you strip out the impact of the capital program in terms of the long-term revenue projects that we're funding, we're looking at some SMT technology projects, some refurbishments that are in that. Again, those are forecast to slightly expensive come year end. At that point, we are continue to vote down into the capital program. And then that looks like through year end, because that has a direct impact on volume and the interest costs that we've got there. On supplies and services, it's always the one area that is massive, because there are so many different chemicals in here. It's fair to say that that's listed in the report. It looks heavily spent actually into time. Again, time limits, mission partnership, cross collaboration, what's coming through, and the largest elements in that. I think it's also fair to say that included within that is the investment in ICT technology angle, which is a very substantial part of the gentlemen. I'm going to be continuing to work with existing planning on that to what that looks like. There's been quite a bit of movement in terms of projects that are coming through this year compared to what was big peak this time last year in terms of medium-term financial plan. So for example, one of the larger elements that brought up in student cases, the project which will be starting between now and the end in terms of expenditure. So what it does mean is that in terms of the capital program, being flexible enough to be able to flex it across the different projects to enable us to continue to deliver from a budgetary perspective on the key priorities as well, which is big design and what it's essential. I think that's all I kind of wanted to say in terms of the income expenditure aspects. The balance sheet elements in terms of the working capital elements, actually all on track. From an investment perspective, from an investors perspective, and a creditors perspective, they're exactly where I would want them to be. From that point of view, the reserves positions, the position that was signed off by the auditors last month, not before last, in terms of the year-end position, so 1st of March, getting out the position. The medium-term financial plan, the New pack is also a position from the May update. Again, that will be updated to send that out January in terms of the next round budget set up and what's the strategy, which is planned. I think the only thing I would just round up by saying is we continue to manage the expenditure elements. There's a number of contract reviews comparisons that come up from the supplies and services, so we continue to review those robustly in terms of the number of licenses that we need, for example, within ICT software aspects, the number of mobile devices essential, so that we can make sure that we still deliver from an operational service perspective, but we're making sure that we're not to screw down with the expenditure in terms of anything that's necessary. The focus still remains in terms of savings. Now, on the year end, that's been all the way through. But we want to also ensure that we've still got enough headroom to be able to make investment in the right things as we go through. From a space development perspective, maintain our flexibility as we go. Make sure that I tie in closely with Darren as we go through into the first things.
Thank you for that. You've explained, we've given us some explanation there in terms of where we are in relation to the current forecast with regards to underspend year end. You mentioned obviously that this figure doesn't take into account reserves and movements around that. I wanted to ask you about your levels of confidence in the explanation where we actually will end up. So this is only a quarter two report. I'd expect a significant amount of change in quarter three. But clearly these forecasts have an impact on any deliberations that we may have in relation to the precept as well. So I just wanted to check back with you on your levels of confidence in relation to this, particularly around that underspend figure.
So actually, in terms of the that underspend figure, as I say, it is on the back of a release of reserves. That point of view. If we don't need to release the reserves, we've still got reserves to be able to put in. And the less reserves that we can use to underpin that, the budget, because that then frees us up to be able to make investments in the capital programme and various other instruments. As we go through the year, the forecast elements become more solid. So absolutely, when we get to Q3 to the end of December, once those figures will change. They will be a lot more solid from that point of view. There are a number of elements that have come through. So Chief's already mentioned damage to us, for example. Again, that's contributed towards the underspending from that point of view. In terms of how that forecast then looks for Q3, yes, it will change. It will be more solid. It will be a better underpinning for the medium-term financial plan discussions that we're having.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I just wanted to check in with you just on the where the Lockwood income is attributed. Should it be cost neutral?
Yeah, it is cost neutral, yes. So apologies for that. It isn't in addition to, it will be offset against the overtime aspect.
Anybody else got any questions in relation to this study?
Just building on your point, I think the importance of that year-end spend, I think we need to be really careful to find that true underlying year-end variance. Because we're conscious that 5.9 is skewed by about 9 million reserve drop in gross. Other pictures we take a step back figure into what is the true reserve spend, what is not. Because as you know, the panel has a reconciliation between the Q2 and the Q3, which is the Q3 variance and the Q3 variance. So what I've read is you go with the what's produced today and the Q3 position being significantly different. I'd rather go with it with a more accurate underlying position at this side of next Friday. We can do it together and just make sure the line positions for the last.
No, absolutely. Absolutely well done. I think the capital programme is very feeds into that as well. So again, that skew or explain the solution.
Anybody else got any questions or comments in relation to that? Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Should we move on then to the child welfare annual report? Yeah, thanks, Commissioner.
So the scrutiny report is attached. It runs up to April 2025. I'll pick up some highlights, Commissioner, if that's okay, and give you questions. So the report references the AFI and the work that is required to address it around having suitably trained skilled staff to carry out safeguarding. So the areas of focus in the report in relation to the SkyDit and ADP interview which has been undertaken, and I can provide you up-to-date numbers if that's helpful. We've got another further 12 planned to be trained throughout the month of December, and there is a plan in place to ensure that that is rolled out to everybody. There's also an induction training that's now delivered to staff moving into PPU, because we appreciate that's a big ask in terms of the change of approach around risk management and some of the sensitivities that come in with PPU. So that was put together with partners, and we're one of the first to take that approach. We've got an internal vulnerability review ongoing in relation to the responses that we've had from HMI, and a vulnerability project board which is pulled together to deal with that. Karen's team assists from the project perspective of it, and then we have governance internally. And there's some best practice that we're putting on within that in terms of the Sativa response, and we know that we've performed well within Sativa, but how do we expect that across other aspects of vulnerability, particularly PPU and some of the domestic abuse type processes? We know that there's been a lot of focus nationally around children within DA and then being recognised as victims within their own right, and we are very much focused on making sure that they get the right protection and recognition for them being victims, and that will hopefully allow us to give a much more holistic approach to how we deal with vulnerability. We've got lots of focus on supervisory support, particularly within the rape investigation teams, safeguarding teams, and those that are dealing with high risk domestic, because we know that those offences are complex. They're very emotive for the people that are investigating it. It's really important the support that they are given, so we need to make sure that they are getting able to give support to the victims that's needed. Mario touched on the response to missing children, so I won't reiterate that here unless there's anything else that is specifically needed. We've also done some work around problem profiles. So the CSE problem profile has been really useful. So there was a template that was provided to Python around how we can utilise some partnership data, because we know that over the years, in relation to different problem profiles, that is an area that we wanted to improve on. And actually, we've had a good buy-in from our partners in terms of how they can contribute and assist us with that. So that piece of work is now developed, and we've got some of the bespoke exploitation teams already in being, which you are aware of. We've increased the age range from MACE to 25-year-olds so that we manage the transitional safeguarding, because historically there's been a gap there, or certainly a very grey area in terms of how that's managed. But we've still got some work that we want to do and want to improve on. So we know that the integration of the missing children's teams in safeguarding hub should improve our overall response to that area of vulnerability. We know that the Operation Make Safe Delivery needs to be reinvigorated, recommenced, and that work is ongoing. And Andy Tech is owning that within his teams, because there are opportunities there for us. And of course, we did that piece of work. It's dropped off for a period of time, and we need to get that back up and running. Operation Encompass, which I know you cited on already, is well embedded, and that's been rolled out across the board with the support of Bernardo's. Some of the work that we need to do is around improving our PPNs. So we historically submit too many PPNs, and I'm not sure that's ever a word I thought I would say when I joined the job, but sometimes you reduce the ability of partners to be able to properly contribute. So we need to make sure that the training is right and appropriate, and the PPN is the right thing to do in the circumstances with the right information. So we know that we've asked officers to submit them in case of missing, if a child stop search. So we know that we're asking for more, but at the same time, there needs to be value and a purpose from the PPN going in. That is still an outlier for us. We're still doing too many. So we're doing a piece of work around that. And we do appreciate that if you probably feel sometimes for our officers that that's a two-handed message, please put more in, don't put more in. So we've got to be really concise with our messaging. So that is certainly on us to manage. I've touched upon the training, and that's not complete yet, so we've got more training to do, and that will include the force-wide training around safeguarding for the non-Fromset area around areas that I've touched upon already. But that has been an investment for us in terms of the main PPE office and RIT around what that looks like. We know that the safeguarding and the stream are currently within the PIR, the Post Implementation Review. We anticipate that will require further resources or change in infrastructure or further investment. Karen's team will be delivering that for us in the new year, and we will give it due diligence and due scrutiny to understand what that looks like. What you will have seen from one of the earlier performance acts is that we don't mind in those areas of everything. When we've touched upon the good performance and the feedback from our victims already, what we can't afford is for that to drop off because of the demand that's increasing. So we will do that work in parallel to make sure that our force response is still maintained. We know we've got some difficulties around partnership funding, and some of the messages that we get nationally causes that disparity in terms of the funding opportunities, because there is levels of duplication and overlapping, and that can cause either opportunities for funding to be minimised because people are looking for the opportunity in the same pot, or actually we need to flex our response, and we can only do that for the 20 minutes of time because we don't have that. So that is always a risk within this area of business. And we are doing an awful lot of work to make sure that whatever we put in is sustainable, is delivering for the victims, and isn't something that we need to unravel 12 months because that's not anything that we can do to and safeguarding. So I think that's probably the highlights, Commissioner. I haven't to pick up on any elements.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for that. And that's really helpful overview, and it's really positive to be mentioned within that. The rolling out of force-wide training with regard to safeguarding. When do you anticipate that to be fully completed across schools?
So PPU and RIT are the priority teams. That will take us through 2026. The induction into safeguarding should be completed within the new year. In terms of safeguarding training to everybody, that's now embedded in their training when they come into the force as new officers. What we probably need to review in terms of the gap is the CPD. So, for example, we've just run a supervisory day for our sergeants, which we've done for the first time in that format. We've always done CPD, but we've changed the approach to it. And that was very much on investigations, risk and supervisory responsibilities as a group, as opposed to split as we used to do it. That will need to continue. We just need to refine our approach to how we manage that. But ending 2026 is when the specialist team will have finished their Skydic and CDIC tour.
Okay, so I just need to unpick that a little bit and to ensure that I properly understand what's possible in terms there. So safeguarding, we say safeguarding is everybody's responsibility. It's not just managed. As citizens, actually, it's a bigger issue, isn't it, than just being somebody's part of somebody's specialist role. As citizens, safeguarding is something that we all have ownership of and a duty to report. So, in terms of that gap in relation to training around safeguarding, I suppose my question is, how do experienced officers who are not specialist officers know that safeguarding is everyone's responsibility? How is that messaging conveyed to them? How do they, in their day-to-day activities, know that they should be reporting, flagging up things they see that are a concern to them? If the training is something that is being rolled out all the time, how is that gap being addressed?
Yes, so this could be me explaining it badly. So the training that I referred to that's being rolled out over a period of time are the SIDIC and SkyDIC courses. So very specific to our specialism teams, so safeguarding, RIT and the PPU. And that is part of our national commitment to the work that we're doing in data compliance. We have always delivered safeguarding training to all of our staff, frontline, and regardless of what your department you're in, safeguarding specialisms or not. We've historically done that when they come into the course of you, when you get into departments and started those training days. So we know that every 10 weeks, individuals have training days, and they are delivered inputs, including safeguarding inputs, throughout those sessions. So that is being well established since we've undertaken that model, which has been at least 9 years, because I was involved in it some time ago. What we've done recently around CPD is we've split some of those training days to deliver further enhanced sessions directly to supervisors. So this is giving them an opportunity to have peer support, peer mentoring, peer learning on very specific areas of their business, which has included this as an element. So this is not necessarily new. We have always done safeguarding training. We are just giving our supervisors another opportunity to pick up on some of that peer learning.
So what we've actually got is a constant, continuous cycle
Absolutely.
of training in safeguarding, in addition to any initial training they take and any specialist training. However, the specialist training is also being rolled out to other groups of officers within WED. So there's a lot of work going on around that.
And we're of course, on top of that, we're of course having the neighbourhood College of Policing package delivered to all of our neighbourhood staff,
Yes.
which is 6 modules of training, and one of those is more tailored towards some of the aspects which relate to safeguarding and wider vulnerability issues.
Yeah, and we call that one, and that training started in October.
So there's that further development opportunity in relation to that as well. So just thinking about something we've talked about today within our meeting, we talked about the pillars, we talked about resourcing across the pillars. In terms of that cycle of training, that continuous cycle and rolling out that additional specialist training as well, are you confident that this is covered, this really important aspect is covered across the in addition to the specialist teams?
Yeah, so Ian Roberts looks after learning and development, and he reports through us through our governance into my SMT, which is monthly. Part of that meeting is around STEAM capability. So I get the update in terms of whether there are gaps, whether there are risks, insurance that we are on schedule, including compliance and dates. So I get that information and we can address any concerns that come from there. In addition to that, we have a seasonal grip meeting. So what that does for us, it looks at what's coming seasonally for the next quarter, because we know that crime patterns, crime tech trends, reporting has changed depending on what individual you're in. Historically, that's been a very operational meeting. We look at things like the rugby, things like Halloween, what is our response to those matters. Within that, we do now include areas of accountability, because we know that just like operational elements and concerns around vulnerability do flex with the seasons. So that gives us an extra level of scrutiny. And within that, we also look at capacity and capability.
Through the theme of safeguarding in everybody's. And I do feel it's really important to emphasise that. And I don't just mean that at the employees, but also in terms of our partners and the partners that we work with as well. How confident are you in the partnership arrangements across WED in relation to child protection? And what I mean by that is, are you assured that our most vulnerable children are getting the multi-agency response that they need?
We've got some very reassuring hand-went setups. We've got Michelle Chaplin, obviously, is our lead who links into all of the arrangements. Probably the gap for us is the one I touched upon in this in terms of that data sharing piece. We all as partners could be better at that in order to inform our approach. Our hydrant and the template they set, it is a significant change in direction and really supportive to us and partners as to how we can support each other. that's relatively new. And the conversation that we are currently having is if we can prove the value in that, if that sets out the template for the way forward, then we look at how we can roll that across other areas of vulnerability, working with our partners. We have an awful lot of support. We've got some good networks, some good relationships. That data piece is the bit that we can all improve on.
Thank you. And that comes up in the normal story on partnership meetings. With data sharing. So yeah, thank you very much for that. Has anybody got any further queries or questions in this report?
Just actually, going back to that data piece, and you touched upon the PPN review. I suppose, how are you ensuring, I guess, that risk isn't being missed? Because you talked about trying to reduce the numbers, and I suppose the challenge is balancing, you know, trying to reduce the volume, but actually not articulating the risk well enough, which might be pushing some of those partnership struggles.
You're spot on, Sam, and that's why we can't do it quickly. We can't give black and white criteria to this is what you want to do, because it is so nuanced.
Yeah.
And actually, what we don't know is the bit that's missing. So we might hold a piece of information which to us is low risk, but unless you make a submission, you don't appreciate what partners have got, which might expand that risk.
Absolutely.
So this is a really difficult area of business to navigate because there is a risk of missing something. And I think culturally, this is what has caused officers and staff to escalate the number of PPNs that they submit because they don't want to miss that risk.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do need to give our partners the capacity in the room to be able to do their business. So it's definitely not easy. It's one that we've been trying to navigate for some time now. And to be frank with you, I haven't got all of the answers, but we are certainly working with partners to make sure we've got safeguards in place that we don't miss the risk, whilst being able to accurately identify where the risks sit. So, yes.
It's a challenge,
It's a challenge.
right, to pick up on
It's a
it,
challenge.
because what we've got to do is give trust to our staff as well. Because I think historically, and you could apply this to multiple areas across policing. People do it just in case.
Yeah.
And you know, you could equate exactly the same approach that we got in relation to our sergeants putting things through to the CPS, which have got no chance of getting a criminal conviction. But they've done what they feel they should have done, but that's actually log jamming the system.
Yeah.
Whereas we've got to give our teams the confidence to make a decision, rationalise that decision, cover all the bases. You've addressed the risk. You haven't got to do it just to be process orientated. You know, and that's what we've got to move away from.
Sometimes it's about articulating, isn't it? And sometimes we don't articulate well enough so our partners can understand why it's something that's risky.
Absolutely. We've got lots of support from our partners in terms of assessing how we approach this. So this is not a single agency approach.
Yeah.
We are working together to understand what it is that we need.
Perfect.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for that. It's a really helpful discussion there in relation to that particular item. Should we move on then to the learning development strategy and report?
It's quite a bit list with the specialist. No, that's fine. It's fine. This is from last year, 2025. So, but we continue to learn. I think the biggest area that we look at is to ensure that we've got value for money, because we were historically sending lots of officers when they need to go training out of force, which was financial and operational burdens. We now are able to deliver quite a lot in-house training staff to deliver these, or we were able to do them virtually. So there's an improvement there. We've part of the criteria, I think the training with the sexual offences has been a improvement because we deliver that course in and this report covers a lot of the training areas that we do the courses, and I'm not going to go through those, but I think there's a plethora there. You can see commission of some of the courses that we do deliver within on force now. And we've rewritten some of the courses to make sure they're current, and with the College of Policing curriculums. Oxfordshire has been a big influence, I think, on some of the sexual offences training that we do deliver now. And achieving best evidence is another huge area for us around vulnerability, etc. We deliver that in-house, and that's constantly reviewed to make sure that they're reflective of current practices as well. There's a lot of portfolios that the learning development team manage. We've got the sergeants, inspectors, etc. And we've also got the direct entry detectives and our officers that are going through. We're not using police now going forward. We've still got some police and detectives going through the process. It wasn't financially valuable. It's a very, very expensive way of bringing our detectives through. We now use direct entry detectives, which is a much better program. We try and police now is extremely expensive, and we've got some very, very good officers through, but it was resource intensive, financially not viable. So this is more beneficial to use this this route now for our direct entry detectives. We also deliver our specialist crime, some of our specialist crime courses within force. We do our GIs, DSs, so we do the crime management, and then we deliver obviously the operational support as well, niche property, etc. So that's delivered in-house as well. They're also very cognizant of officers that are neurodivergent. So I think that's a really big focus now. They recognise that we've got officers with neurodiverse conditions, and we can adapt courses and we can adapt working practices to that, which is, I think, is a real testament going forward to an inclusive force. We've got some of the operational specialist training we can do in force. For instance, we've got specialist ops road training, which we can now deliver in force, taser, etc. The operational safety training, PPST, our compliance with that within force is probably one of the best in the country, and we grasped the changes within the College of Policing a couple of years when that came in, and got on the front foot. So I think we're now 98.
Of all our operational staff, 98% are compliant.
Which and I think there's an oversight meeting that the ACC chairs to make sure that we either have got restricted officers in the right places, or we've got that compliance, really important to safety, etc. So I think probably one of the biggest areas, I think, just to cover is the significant development where we've managed to secure a different route for officers to come in, police entry precept. We are just rolling that out now. It's been very successful. We're accredited to do that now, and that I think probably we all agree attracts a more diverse group of individuals that come in. It's not the degree course. It's up to a level 5. But there's an option for the officers then to do that additional if they need to be in the end. I think that's given us more flexibility and more freedom, I think, to get more diverse resource. And I think that is probably a whistle stop to but that would answer questions.
That's really helpful. I particularly welcome this report. I think it's really important. It's an investment, isn't it? It's an investment made on behalf of the citizens of Gwent into the police force and staff. So it's really important that we consider this and we consider the investments that are being made. We've touched on some of the more specialist provision in our previous item, but I do think, certainly for me, it's really important that we have these discussions, because it's important that staff, officers and staff across the board where the investment is being made in terms of their development as well. And just in relation to that, the law actually refers to a budget of £600,000. It says here, learning and development has a budget of £600,000, reduced budget from the previous year, and with the full spend predicted. And I just wanted to ask a question around that, really, in terms of seeking an assurance that this budget will provide the delivery of appropriately trained officers and staff. This is a reduced budget. Can you provide an assurance around this? And will further investment be required going forwards, or is this an annual figure that you feel you can set up?
What we, I will refer to that, but if it needs to come in. But what we look at now is we've got a budget section, obviously. We have managed to reduce some of the costs because of, as I said in the beginning, we don't send so many staff out. They don't do residential courses as the word. Training is an absolute must. And we have a meeting on a regular basis to assess training needs. And we've got to make sure that we've got the right people appropriately trained, and that we've got resources in the right places. At the moment, I don't think there's any requirement for that to be increased, because we are the training that we're doing, a lot of it we either use collaboration, so we can use South Wales or close forces there. Income generation is another one that we look at, whether we can get any courses that we can put people in. But at the moment, I don't think there is any issue with that budget and getting the training that we require. So
there is sorry, I don't counter that at all. There are some foreseeable challenges on the horizon. The rollout of the Taser T10 new device will be a bit of a challenge nationally for policing, because obviously there's a new product there that needs to be delivered, so that for all of our Taser officers, that means a new course. It's not just a quick adapt. This is a different device. You can cover it in an hour. It's a start from base aspect, which is a bit of a strategy for us on top. The counter to that is we might have to make some short-term investments as well as a force, as one of the 43 forces, for some long-term gains. So the PPST example that Vicky said we got great compliance with, it comes as a huge abstraction for us, because that's now a 2-day full course. There is an opportunity potentially for us to be involved in a pilot scheme, whereby we potentially might be able to cut that down to every other year or 1-day course. We've got Vicky's going to progress with the college and opportunity to be involved in that. It may be that we have to invest a small amount as a force into the team are going to conduct that review.
Yeah.
Essentially within the possibility, but the savings nationally are like £30 million. Actually £30 million if they get it right, and they can address risk as well. So it's one that we're revisiting all the time. And I think the other thing is the driving requirements now, which I touched on, are huge by comparison to previously, and the maintenance of that chief driving instructor, deputy, and all of the requirements to keep ourselves licensing our own staff is a substantial investment that we have to make. But the alternative to that is going outside, and the cost of that will be astronomical.
Really helpful context. Very helpful indeed. And so.
I'm fond of everything that's required from that perspective. You know, so the reduction reflecting the actual spend that's needed from a budget setting perspective. If the ask is there more than
Okay, thanks for that.
The other thing we are trying to progress, and I know it's not necessarily an overnight thing, but definitely something that we're looking at, is recruitment in relation to Welsh language as well, and whether that be undertaken via the route of the college, who've given a quote for the 4 Welsh forces, or whether that be done by an alternative means, we will come back to you on. But either way, it is an additional cost. Because we have actually got to invest in the people who are able to do those initial assessments. That's part of the language requirements, really.
Well, I was just make a point about the college subject.
You are not wrong, Commissioner.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's an ongoing discussion as we go forwards. Yeah. So okay, thank you for that. One point I did want to make, just quickly, is that it's really good to see the delivery of the upstander and bystander training. Great to see that in there. And it just made me think about the work of culture and just really to ask what the plans are for the ongoing developments around culture.
Yeah, so there's a number of developments connected, actually the full rollout of that training you just referred to. There's the University of South Wales work around the cultural hydra, which we are rolling out from April next year. So there'll be a cohort of officers working with the university to go through the command training, if you like, in relation to how to deal with particular cultural challenges, and a really, really good project and program which we've developed there with the university. So I've done it. I think chief officers are interested in doing it as well. And just one, it isn't the observation, it is a very interactive session. So that's the first, that's the second thing. And the third thing is the second iteration of the Lead and Inclusive Teams pilot with the College of Policing. So we were lucky enough to get a spot on the pilot for that with the college. So they've refined it as a result of some of the academic review that's taken place. And part 2 of that is going to roll out in the new year as well. So our supervisors will be part of part 2 with the college. So that's really the 3 elements of the training plan for next year.
That's really helpful. Lots of questions. Okay, thank you very much for that. We move on to what I believe to be a final item for the public section of the meeting, which is the presentation on the Chief Constable budget requirements. So over to you, Chief Constable. I just wanted to ask, if you've got a facility this to be shared on screen so you can see it on this it's presented.
Yeah, there's a few slides just to refer to. They are pretty high level slides.
With this, we've got stopped in about 10
Yeah.
minutes today. So,
Just waiting for it to load. Sorry.
thank you. Thank you, Scott.
I think while Scott's doing that, just to set a bit of the context behind it, Commissioner. I think we're all very aware that the force has been on a significant programme of change within the last year. We've introduced the new policing model, far more functional model. Obviously the purpose of that is to enhance that service delivery, ensure we continue providing value for money at the same time, and do that in line with our mid-term financial plan, which goes right out to 2030, 2031. I won't go hugely into detail, but I think it's important to say the operating model is something we talk about a lot on the 3 pillars. But if we put that on a backdrop of the way we've gone towards a functional model in recent years, we've bolstered certain departments, reviewed them to make sure they're effectively running, like your firearms licensing team, your professional standards team. We've reviewed our support functions on estates and facilities, occupational health, human resources, and we've created new departments too, like the rape investigation team, virtual response team, our file management unit, our investigation hub. So we've really evolved as a force, I think, into a far more functional model with people having responsibility for doing certain areas. And part of what our challenges ahead is to really build on that on that foundation really, which is mapped into our plan. So really, I suppose putting the context into place is just recognising the increasing pressures which are on our service right now. We're seeing not just a rise in volume of calls, which we are meeting the demand for with our restructure that's also happened in the control room, but also in the complexity of those types of crime as well, and obviously the associated safeguarding demands that are on there as well, and the online activity that is happening as well to be able to cater that. You do that, we're doing that in a backdrop of a cost of living crisis, the broader economic challenges that we know are out there as well, and these are also these factors are assisting in relation to driving up some of those demand aspects such as shoplifting and antisocial behaviour as well, which we are having addressed. So as I won't go through quite a lot of what we've done in the meeting already, but I think it's fair to say that it's well known that we've got a strong neighbourhood focus moving forward, one that we don't want to move away from. We've really started seeing inroads in relation to building that trust and confidence, which is our overall false mission, part of your criminal justice plan, part of the Chief Constable's plan as well. And you know, to have that strong investment in visible policing, our PCSOs, our community action team, the right capability to be able to deal with dangerous dogs, our technology that we've invested in relation to neighbourhood matters, are all things that are going to maintain that drive that we're currently on. Strong intention to keep that PCSO for every ward within Gwent, and then I suppose at the same time meeting those national concerns as well, and making sure that we're on that pathway to that 10-year plan of cutting violence against women and girls and knife crime by 50%, whilst delivering the policing vision of 2030, digital technology and the capability and sustainability challenges as well. So they're the priorities for us moving forward. Move to the next slide, Scott, please. I think I just covered off that one, sorry, on the next one. So that efficiency obviously is a huge cornerstone for our approach as a force. We have delivered significant savings. We're looking to continue to identify new opportunities through our change programs and through our new models. And obviously we look to put through new opportunities through our service improvement board, which the DEP chairs. Looking at new ways of working, investing in technology in the control room, but also automation and AI opportunities as well. And obviously there's the new opportunity with emerging technology of improving our victim satisfaction rates as well, and the way that we engage with our victims and keep them on that journey when they're subjected to a crime. We do national benchmarking with other forces. We don't visit other forces to look at best practice. ACC sat alongside me undertook that, and that did prove real benefits for us in the way we invested in our pace setup model within the force, and we're keen to continue doing that. We'll look at that, obviously working closely with our partners across the public and the third sector, co-commission services where the opportunities are there to avoid any duplication and maximise those opportunities that we've got potentially ahead of us. Next slide, please, Scott. And then, if I suppose in relation to the risk, then there are a number of risks. Obviously, national funding, inflationary pressures, potential changes to partners' contributions, emerging societal challenges. Even half the press things that we saw will all have an impact on us. For Matt can go into some of the details on what those finances look like. But I suppose that some of the main concerns that we have would be
associated to the continuance potentially of the neighbourhood policing guarantee. That's not a certainty, but it is something that we certainly want to keep within force. That could potentially lead us to an unaccounted for shortfall of £2 million. The impact potentially of the sentencing bill as well could be considerable. On the force, it's estimated that, astronomical fee nationally, but what that turns into from a context perspective for Gwent could be an additional unaccounted for £3 million plus, which gives you a £5 million deficit outside of what we're talking for and planning for at the moment. So incredible, challenging time. At the same time, looking at those are unknowns, but potential things that we have to be very, very aware of as a risk for the force. Within the force, there's an aspiration. We would like to improve our property store at long term, and also our training provision long term, which are both on lease at the moment, and agreements that need to be revisited one way or another. We've obviously got the ongoing investment in the collaborative firearms range, which is on schedule, but is a hefty investment for all three of the Southern Wales forces. We've got parts of the estate that need some form of renovation, even if that is a low-level renovation. Cumbrian Police Station is certainly one of those areas that does need a form of investment to be able to make it fit for working purposes for the foreseeable years, and that's got to be done in a measurable way. We've also got to facilitate some changes within our workforce, such as the ICT convergence with the SRS staff returning to Gwent, so having the right areas for people to be able to work in who are newly returning to the organisation. Important to keep those staff with brilliant skills within the organisation. So we're having to consider that amongst our estate's provision as well. Part of the continuous improvement of the model as well, the operating model, obviously accommodating our community action team and facilitating them is important for us. And we've got the ICT developments. I mentioned about the victim public engagement systems, our joint data analytics platform as well is something that we need to be considering our investment for. And then I suppose just to add to it, the positives about the Gwent Public Services Board and the One Public Service ethos are key enablers for us, and we'll continue to look at how we can maximise the benefits of doing things together to meet those local community needs. That's a really high-level surface coverage of what the challenges are for moving forward. I don't propose that I go into the L&D things that we just discussed for learning development challenge, Commissioner. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
That's really helpful. Thank you for that overview. And I think it's really important that we set the context, especially the members of the public, to help everyone understand not just the investments that are being made, but actually, those statutory requirements you have, as well as the additional pressures that come along with policy changes as well. So it's really important that people understand that, and some significant issues emerging in relation to policy decisions around both around the neighbourhood policing guarantee and the revision to the sentencing as well, which we'll better understand
in the
very near future. So there are some challenges there. So thank you for that. That's really helpful overview of the challenges going forward. It's good that we have this fresh in our minds as we start to deliberate, consider budget requirements, and also reset requirements in terms of the citizens of Gwent. So thank you very much for that, Chief Constable. At this point in our meeting, this is where we close the public part of the meeting. So thank you everyone for your contributions today. Thank you to those members of the public who've joined us or who go on to watch this in their own time. Thank you for taking the interest in the work that we do here. And Scott, at this point, you can end the public part of the meeting, please.